Okay, so let's make Pong with Sharpex2D. Delete my past failure attempts because Windows is annoying. Keeps changing my color scheme to basic and then it makes my mouse invisible. So let's go find Sharpex2D on GitHub. Let us switch to the branch 130 because that's the previous release. Let's be lazy and download the zip file. Save it to desktop projects because that's where I'm gonna do stuff. I don't know if it's gonna download it or not. 30 megabytes, okay. So let me extract the zip file with 7-zip. Delete the old one. Rename this to that. So you can see here's all the stuff we got. Here's the game engine itself, and here's the external stuff like CS Core, which is the thing we're going to use for audio, DirectX 9, 10, 11, those are the graphics libraries. If you go in the game engine and look in rendering, there's also OpenGL, which is another graphics library. That's the one we're going to use. And in the samples, you've got Flying Bird and X-Plane, the two sample games. So I'm just going to copy the game engine here, and I'm going to put it right in the... No, don't do that. I'm just going to put it right here. And then I might as well get Visual Studio 2013 from Windows Desktop Express. I'm going to make a new project. Windows Forms, just going to call it Pong. Going to put it in the place where I put everything else, right here. And then while it makes it, I'm going to look in there. No, don't do that to me. So I've got Pong here. Actually, what I want to do is this thing that I copied here, I really want it inside the solution directory. So I've got one solution, and I've got two projects here. One Pong, which is the actual game, and two Sharpex2D, which is the game engine. Two CS proj files. And so cool. If I open the solution again, because I closed it before, so this form1.cs that it generated for me automatically, I'm just going to delete because I don't need it. And I double click the program.cs, and this application run. Well, actually, first I'm going to look at, here's the solution, and Pong is the project. I'm going to right click the project and add existing item. No, what do I want? Right click the solution, I mean, and then add existing project. That's what I want. Inside the solution directory, you can see Sharpex2D. I'm going to add this Sharpex2D.cs proj. Now there are two projects. I'm going to make a reference in the first project to the second project in solution projects. So now when I want to delete this application.run line and I type sgl.initialize, this red underlined thing, now that I've added the reference to the Sharpex2D project, when I right click this red underlined squiggly, it will actually know how to resolve this. If I hadn't added the reference, it wouldn't know that. So I add this using directive, and now it knows what this means. If I delete up to the parenthesis and I add it, it should give me suggestions here for what to do for this function. And I like the configurator one, so I'm going to look at new configurator, and I'm going to type parenthesis again, and it should show me that there are 3 constructors for this configurator. And I am just going to use the second one, back buffer, game instance, and render target. The back buffer is going to be, a vector2 of what screen size we want for our game. I'm just going to use 800 by 600. Don't change my color scheme. So I'm just going to use, game back buffer, new back buffer. It doesn't know what that is either, so I'm going to right click it and resolve it. Sharpex2D.rendering. So this is basically just including the directory that it's looking in. So the Sharpex2D project has a rendering folder, and that has the back buffer file in it. So with this using directive, I can see in there, and it will actually know what this is. So if I do the parentheses again, it should give me the 2 different constructors for this class, which is a vector2 or an int width and height. So I'm going to do vector2 because, well, no, I'm just going to do width and height because why not? 800 comma 600. And then the next one it wants for the second constructor is going to be a game instance, but we don't have one yet. So I'm going to go back to my Pong project, and I'm going to add the class main_game.cs. Now this class main_game in the namespace Pong, I'm just going to extend the game class from Sharpex2D, and it doesn't know what that is, so I'm going to resolve it with right click, including Sharpex2D. And it's going to include by default all of the stuff that's in there, so that's good. So now I can do new main game like it wanted to do for the second constructor. That's my game instance. Extends the game class. And now I just need a render target. So let me create one of those. RT equals new render target. And it doesn't know what that is either. So right click resolve, Sharpex2D.surface. And again, that's just getting the directory, surface. And then render target should be in there. Now I don't really remember, but no. So it looks like, I don't know if there's no constructor, if it's just a boring constructor, but so is that going to work? Probably not. What are my errors? So it says Pong.mainGame does not implement inherited abstract member, on load content, and on initialize. That's because we extended the... Oh, it's doing that thing again. It's because we inherited the game class, which requires that we... if a class has abstract things in it, we absolutely have to implement them when we extend that thing. That's what abstract things exist for. So we have to do on load content. And I don't know what type it is. And also on initialize. Must have a return type, but what is it? Probably. I assume it's void. If I rebuild, it should tell me what's wrong. Okay, no it doesn't. Visual Studio is being a jerk. So I'm gonna look in the original download stuff in X-Plane. If I look in the Game 1 class in X-Plane, it should have a good example of this. So, public override void onload content. That is basically what I want. And on initialize. I want that too. Give me that. Oh, and I need one of those. Doesn't know what launch parameters is, so let's remind it. Game service. Not all code paths return a value. So in this example, it just returned a new engine configuration. And it had inside it OpenGL Graphics Manager, which is good. I want to use that. So I'll use OpenGL. Should be in rendering. OpenGL. And then the wave out initializer, I don't even really want to use that. But what do I want to use? I think I want direct sound initializer. No, I don't know. I'm just going to use wave out for now, because why not? That's the audio thing. Direct sound is better, but I can't remember how to use that. So, main game, on initialize. Yeah, it does. It's right there. I'll rebuild it. Target has no constructors defined. Render target. Well, is there a render target? It's going to be in program.cs. He has a render target. And he's doing, okay, so it doesn't have a constructor. He's doing this create function. So, let's do that. And then after he creates it, he's got window title, window icon, surface layout. Let's just grab those. No, I don't need those. Let's just do the surface layout. Can minimize, can maximize, and can close. Okay, sure. That's good enough for me. And if I rebuild, it should not yell at me. What happens if I start this? It crashes because I'm still doing Windows Forms things. I don't need those. Now I've got a blank screen. So now I have to go to my main game, onload content. That should be where I want to do my scene stuff. Scene manager. Game component manager and scene manager. Okay. So the scene manager is what manages our scenes. Yeah. So onload content. We want it. Add scene. We don't have any scenes. So I'm going to go back to the original project. Pong, right click, add directory, scenes, and in there I'm going to add class Pong scene, that's yes. And I'm just going to extend the scene class, which it doesn't know what it is yet. Resolve using Sharpex2D rendering scene. Now it should know what it is, but if I rebuild, it'll yell at me because scene has abstract. Wait, what? Oh, because this is not done yet. But it should yell at me for better reasons than that. If I rebuild, it should yell at me because this abstract thing isn't implemented. This load content dealy. If I look at any scene example from X-Plane, I can see load content. Load content looks like this. So I'm going to do that. And it doesn't know what Content Manager is, so I'll remind it. And then he's doing some Texture2D stuff, and that'll be useful to me later. So I'm going to get that. And for now, I don't need to load any content. But also it wants me to have initialize in there. So that's this. Input Manager. That's probably going to be useful. Doesn't know what it is. Doesn't know what SGL is either. Doesn't know what input is either. What is input? I don't know what it is. Input. It's one of these. Input Manager. Okay. So then we also need a draw and an update function. Draw. Yes. Drawing is, this function is going to do all the rendering for our stuff. So I don't need any of that. And then update is going to do all the math for the in-between stuff. Update. I'll just copy this. Make it look like this. Because I like it. Okay. So, main game, we are actually going to add the scene now that it actually exists. I'm going to add new Pong scene. Resolve using Pong.scenes. I'm actually resolving using my own stuff now, unlike before. So that's good. Going to Pong scene. Now I actually should have my stuff. Of course, you can't really see it. In my main game.cs, what I'm going to do after I add the scene, I'm going to want to do scene manager dot active scene equals what is it? Active scene equals scene manager dot get intro scene. Except I don't have that, so it's going to be Pong scene. Okay. So now it's working, but you can't really tell. Game scene, clear color. So somewhere in the wiki there should have been where was it? That's where I am. In the drawing page, probably. Clear color. Color. In the scene management wiki page. Clear color. That's what I want. So in the scene itself, Pong scene, where was this? In draw. If I do this now, you can see that it's actually going to the scene, because this is where I'm doing the clear color. Okay, so that's pretty much what I want. And now that I have the scene and everything, I'm going to want some new classes. Add class ball.cs, because you can't have Pong without a ball. And then it's going to want public, this is for the constructor. And then might as well also add a class for the paddles. Okay, now in my Pong scene, I'm going to have two of those and one of those. Then in my initialize function, when the scene is created, which is right here, it does this initialize function, and also the load content function. So here I'm going to do left equals new paddle, right equals new paddle, ball equals new ball, creating them there. And then update and draw. Can't really do anything here yet because these classes don't do anything. So I'm going to want them to do stuff. What do I want here? I want them to do stuff. In the X-Plane game, there's this useful class called iDynamic Hitbox. So I'm going to steal it. Not that way though. I'm going to steal it by just copying the file, bringing it into my game, and then I'm just going to go to my Pong project, add existing item, iDynamic Hitbox, because it's super useful. And then I can just kind of implement it with the same thing that I use to extend classes, iDynamic Hitbox. And it won't know what it is, so I'll resolve it. No, what? Oh, what am I doing? No. What's going on? Oh, it's because when I copied it, it was using the old namespace xplane.core. So I don't want that. I'm just going to do Pong. I could keep it if I wanted to have it, but I don't. So, going back to where I was. Now it knows what it is, because it's in the same namespace, which is what I prefer. And the ball will also extend that. iDynamic Hitbox. And now if I rebuild, with implementing that interface, it should yell at me. Because I have to implement this intersect with thing. Because the iDynamic hitbox interface has this abstract dealy intersects with. All abstract things have to be implemented by the things that implement the interface. So I'm going to do that. Basically, I would prefer to just copy the deal because it's there. Entities, I can copy it from any of these probably. Intersects with. I'm just going to copy these 4 lines. And then I'm also going to need the bounds, which is right here. Which is probably just that. Public rectangle bounds. Now this object basically can give me the math. This just keeps track of the actual XY width and location of the thing, of the hitbox. So if the paddle is like 2 pixels by 10 pixels, it'll keep track of the coordinates. And when I have this intersects with function, it basically takes as a parameter anything else that implements this interface. So if the paddle implements this interface and the ball also implements this interface, we can just use this intersects with function on both of them. So I'm going to copy this and also put it here. So the ball will also have it, and then the paddle will have this bounce thing, and the ball will also have this bounce thing. Now that'll no longer yell at me, but this also needs math. Sometimes we're just going to guess randomly. And now if I rebuild it, shouldn't be quite as mad at me. Sweet. Now I start and everything's fine, but the Pong scene doesn't do anything yet. So, what if it did stuff? I'm going to want the paddle to have a position. Vector 2 position. And it doesn't know what that is yet. Oh wait, of course not. It has to be within the class. Be organized. And then I'm going to define that pos equals. How about we have that come in from the constructor. So when I create this paddle in Pong scene, I'm going to have to give it a position. New vector 2. Let's just say left will appear at 10 pixels by 10 pixels. So in the top left corner of the screen. Why is it yelling at me? And then this one will be, since it's a 800 wide, I'm going to make it 780 or something like that. 790 by 10. So the paddle now has a position, and that's good, but the ball doesn't. But what if it did? And then when that's created, pause will equal position, which doesn't exist yet, factor 2, position, cool. Now in Pong scene, it's going to want me to do that too. Why not just copy one of those? Except since it's, let's just make this 400 because it's in the middle, and 300 because it's in the middle. So the ball will appear in kind of the middle of the screen. Yeah. And now the paddle and the ball, I guess it would be nice if they actually had some graphics. So I'm just going to do MS Paint. And then, why don't I zoom in a million times? And then just resize it to like a really tiny thing. This can be, let's go to Desktop, Projects, Pong, the actual project itself. Let's create a directory for all the graphics and audio and stuff. I'll call it resources. And then inside there, I'll put this as paddle.png. And then I'll make a smaller one, square deal. That'll be the ball.png. Okay, so good enough. And then we'll have, since this is the paddle, I'll do Texture2D, T2D, why not? And I won't know what that is, so I'll resolve it. And then this texture will be the graphic thing that I just made. In the constructor, since all the paddles are going to look the same, I'm just going to do T2D equals new texture 2D. And this, wait, what's going on? Instance of the abstract class, oh, come on. I think the textures are slightly different. How did he do it? Texture 2D. Any texture. That's passed in as a parameter. So what is where are enemies created? They're created in the entity composer. Enemy, I don't know. Enemy texture, where is that? So here's how you actually get textures. Content manager load texture 2D. So I'm going to do that instead of what I was going to do. And this mine animation, if I start, it should freak out probably. Content manager doesn't exist. Why not? Because you have to make it exist. He created the content manager in the entity composer. I'm lazy, so I'm just going to do it everywhere. SGL, it doesn't know what that is. Content manager doesn't know what that is. Okay, so now it should know what this is, probably. If I rebuild, it shouldn't yell at me anymore. And then if I start, it will freak out. Why? Unhandled? Because it can't get that asset. Of course not. Because I just copy-pasted. So mineanimation.png, that's the thing from Xplane. It basically, when it looks for this stuff, if I go to bin debug, it's looking in the content directory, which I don't care for. So I'm just going to basically imagine that I'm in here. I'm going up 1, 2, 3 directories, and then I'm going into resources. So go up 3. 1, 2, 3. And then I'm going into resources. And then I'm just going to put the file name in here. String file name equals, what does it equal? I don't know. I think it was paddle.png. And just making sure that it's in there, yeah. So those should be good. And I'm going to do a similar thing for the ball. Except it's not going to be, it's not going to know some of this stuff. So I'm going to give it the content manager. And remind it where all this stuff is. And this doesn't exist. Texture2D, T2D. Cool. Except for file name is not going to be paddle, it's going to be ball.png. So now it should have the information of what graphics to draw, but it's not going to draw anything. Especially, don't do that. Okay, so now it's going to, oh yeah, so for example, if I look inside of his enemy class, you can see that, oh no, that's a bad example. Draw. Well, whatever. No, I'm curious, why doesn't he do that? I could have sworn he did. Samples. In core, entities, player maybe? Oh, he implements entity, which probably does all this stuff. Okay. Well, what I want is there's these interfaces, iDrawable and iUpdateable, and I want to implement those. It's kind of unnecessary, but it's just kind of nice to know what's going on, because if I rebuild now, it should yell at me, which is what I want. I'm a masochist like that. So it wants me to implement these interface members. iUpdateable and iDrawable, it has update and draw. So that's what I want. And it tells me public void update, and it takes a game time. Game. I can name it whatever I want, but now that should be good. If I rebuild, it won't yell at me quite as much. It still wants draw though. Public void draw. And I should do what they do, so sprite, just looking at this as an example, sprite batch, because I'm creative, game time. Now it should not yell at me, because I did what it wanted to. And I'm going to do the same deal for the paddle. So I'm going to implement iDrawable, iUpdateable. And again, these aren't really necessary, it just reminds me that I want to do this stuff and I like it. The only thing that really needs these update and draw functions is the scene itself. Because the scene is going to be updated and drawn by this scene manager. So if it didn't have the update and draw functions, it would freak out. But the ball and paddle, I don't really need to name them update and draw, but they do need to exist. Something needs to be updating this paddle when I do my input up and down, and something needs to be drawing it every few milliseconds when it's been updated. So, update for the paddle, I'm going to want to do input for the ball. Input isn't going to matter, it's just going to be gravity and whatnot. So, draw, basically the sprite batch that's being passed into this draw function is the same one that's being passed in here. So the scene manager will pass in a sprite batch that I will pass into all the things that I want to draw. It's kind of like a pyramid type thing. So in Pong's scene draw, what I'm going to do is just left.draw, and then I'm just going to pass in all the stuff that I got here. Right.draw. And then ball.draw. Oops. And then it's just kind of awesome like that. In this draw, I do these draws. And it's kind of the same here for the most part, but it's like left.update game time. Whoops, gotta do semicolon. Right.update game time. Ball.update game time. So I'm just drawing these here and updating these here. Pretty simple, but these don't really do anything yet. So, since basically when you have in Sharpex2D, when you have stuff that you want to draw, you can either have a texture 2D or you can have an animated sprite sheet. But since the paddle isn't really animated, it's just this rectangle thing, I'm just going to do a texture 2D. And then in the draw, I'm just going to do t2d dot, what am I going to do? No, sprite batch dot draw texture. And then I'm just going to do, since there are like 10 constructors here, I can do a whole bunch of different stuff. But I'm just going to do the one that's t2d, and then it is going to have different options. I'm just going to give it a position, because I have the texture that I want to draw, but I need to tell it where I want to draw it. So I'm just going to give it pause, which is my position from up here that I set on the constructor, and in the update function I'm going to change position so that in the draw it always draws position, but this is going to change every time. In my Pong scene, I do this update. Wait, no, I do this update. So, yeah. This is where we're going to listen to the input in here. And the ball is just going to change its position because it's crazy. It's just going to do stuff automatically. Go away. Paddle update needs to listen to my input. So let's look at X-plane as an example. The player, does this do input? No. Input must be done by the entity composer. Input. Yeah. So we're going to want an input manager in my paddle, because that's what actually does this stuff. And it doesn't know what that is, so I'm going to remind it what it is. And then, what does he actually do with it? He sets it to an input manager. So I'm going to do the same. When I create my paddle, I'm going to set the content manager and the input manager. And then in the update function, I'm going to use this input dealie to pay attention to what's going on. Input. What does he actually do, though? I guess he has a keyboard state, which is, this is the thing that actually uses input. He grabs keyboard out of it and he gets state. So what I'm going to do in update, kind of what he's doing, he's got a function for handle input. I'm going to do that too. So I'm going to have a function called do input stuff, and then I'm going to create it here, public void do input stuff. and it's probably going to want the game time. Because game time will provide us information for how many milliseconds have passed since the last time the update function was run. So that's going to be useful. And then he uses the key state like this. Key state that is key down, key set left, and key set right, key set up, and key set down, etc. So I think down is going to be useful. So I'm going to copy that. In my do input stuff, if key state is key down, blah blah blah, I'm going to do something kind of similar to what he's doing. Pause is going to equal a new vector2, and then here I'm going to have the x and y that I want. So since my key is down, x is always going to stay the same. Pause.x, but y is going to change. Pause.y plus. So x is left and right and y is up and down, but since the window starts at the top left, y positive is down and y negative is up. So when the key is down, I'm going to want to increase y, add to y, and I'm going to use the, well, I don't really have a velocity, but I do have a game time elapsed time. This is going to be the number of milliseconds, I think, since the previous time the update function was run. So I'm going to do this. Actually, I might as well have a velocity, even if it's not going to do. What is it going to be? Float velocity equals, how about 0.1 f? Why not? So now I'm kind of doing a similar thing as he is. So I'm using velocity times the number of milliseconds, and that will kind of move the position of this thing. How about else if this I'm going to make key up. It's going to be minus. Key up will minus, and key down will plus. Add, subtract, whatever. That might work. So now, in my update function, I'm doing input stuff, which should call this, and based on the game time, elapsed game time, it will move me up or down. And in my Pong scene, oh my god. Yeah, don't ever ask me again. Why did you change suddenly? So, in my Pong scene, in my update, I'm updating left, right, and ball. Draw. It's left, right, and ball. Okay. So, what happens if I hit start? I don't actually know. Wow, so now we can control the paddle. Actually, we're controlling both of them, so that's kind of not as good. So what I want to do is in the paddle, what I often do in the input stuff is I have a string input method or something like that, and in the constructor I'll have input method. No, wait, what am I doing? String input method. Since I name them the same thing, I usually don't do that, but what I'm going to have to do is I'm going to do this dot input method. That just means I'm talking about this one right here rather than this one. This dot input method equals input method. So this refers to that, not that. And the input method will tell me which method I want. Like I can have a keyboard, I could have AI, that sort of thing. Why is it doing this to me again? I told it not to do this. Okay. So, now the input method will determine which way I want to do stuff. So, in here, oh my god, it won't give it up. In here I'm just going to do if input method equals player. Then I'm going to do all this stuff that I wrote. Oops. Else if input method equal to AI, then I'm going to do some other stuff. Actually, right now I'm just going to do nothing. And then it's going to yell at me because I didn't have an input method before, but now I do. AI. Oops, I needed a comma. Now it should actually separate these two, and when I hit start, I'm going to see that I'm only controlling the left paddle instead of the right one, instead of both of them. And that is a really tiny paddle. So I'm going to go fix that. In the resources directory, edit my paddle, zoom in a zillion times, and then just like double it or something. Now when I play, it should be slightly more reasonable. Now the ball is not drawing, so I'm going to do the thing that I did before for the paddle, except I'm going to do it for the ball. Now what happens? It's drawing the ball very tiny, right in the middle like that. Okay, so update doesn't do anything for the ball right now. So I'm just going to make it have a velocity. We're going to want, what do I want? Float velocity. And then in the constructor, velocity equals, I don't know, 2.5f or something. 0.2f. And then in update, I'm going to do pos equals new vector2, kind of like before. It's just updating itself to the same thing right now. What I'm going to do is position x will change by, how about plus? And actually, how about I do two different velocities? I'm going to have x velocity and plus y velocity. Those don't exist yet. They will. X, y. And this will be x, y velocity equals 0.2 f. Why not? So now what happens if I, oh my god, it changed my color scheme again. So it's going really slowly. Okay, so what if it were going, first of all, don't do that. What if it were going twice as fast? Or more than that? What if we're like 0.8? I don't know. 1.2. Yeah, that's reasonable. So it kind of just vanishes into nowhere. If I were going to, during the update, I will check. Oh god, it's doing it again. If pos.y is greater than 600, which is basically the screen size, then how about this dot reverse the y velocity, which doesn't exist yet. Public void reverse y velocity, and then we'll kind of whoops. Y velocity factor 2. Wait, no, it's a float. That should reverse it. And then I'm going to have the same thing for x. Reverse x velocity. X velocity equals negative x velocity. Now, when pos is greater than 600, reverse y velocity. Hopefully that works. Yeah. Okay. Cool. Now I just have to, in my Pong scene, I guess just kinda left update, right update, ball update. It's doing that stuff again. Don't do that. So after I've updated all three of these, I'm going to check if ball dot intersects with left or ball dot intersects with right. These are the two paddles. Then I'm just going to do ball dot reverse x velocity, and maybe that will work. But when it starts, it's going to the right. Wait, what? It's going down now. That's really inconvenient. And then I bet it'll just float into infinity when it goes to the top. Yeah. So I'm gonna go to this and kind of do another one of these. That's if position that y is less than 0. Do that. Now I don't really know why it's starting with such a small x velocity. Is it always reversing? Reverse x velocity. Intersects with left or ball intersects with right. Oh yeah, that's going to be a problem. Because I didn't set the bounds properly on this. So it's going to bounce off, and then it's just not going to do anything. So I prefer it if the ball started going the opposite direction. so I'm going to make it negative. I want to see if I can actually hit this thing. Oh, I'm not fast enough. No. Oh, come on. Oh, come on. Oh, that's right. So, I haven't set the bounds on anything. So, the paddle has bounds, doesn't it? Where? Yes. I don't know why I have it separated from all the other stuff. And the ball also has bounds. So, when I'm updating the position, I would also like to update the bounds. Bounds equals new rectangle. What? I can have two vectors. First vector. Okay. So I guess the first vector is going to be position, and the second vector is going to be the bottom right corner of what I'm looking at. So that is going to be new vector 2, and I'm going to want to do position.x for the first part plus T2D, which is my texture, dot width. And then my y is going to be position.y plus T2D dot height. So now it's going to know the bounds based on the position, which is my top left part of my bounds, and the new vector 2 with x plus width and y plus height. That's going to be my bottom right type deal. And stop changing my color scheme. Because it makes my mouse invisible. So I'm basically going to want to do the same thing for the ball. I mean, this is the ball. The same thing for the paddle, I mean. So wait, what? I do that in the update. Anytime I update my position, actually I should really have a function for updating my position, but at the moment I'm not going to have that. I wish I had a function that every time it updated my position, it would also update my bounds. But at the moment, I'm not going to do that because I'm stupid. I'll do it later. Yeah. And now that my bounds are being updated, every time my position is being updated, I should be able to actually hit that thing. Damn it. Okay. Oh, come on. Oh, I commented out that thing. Okay. Okay. Kind of not what I wanted. I mean, it worked, but it kind of worked too well. Like, it didn't actually get close to my paddle. This says left or this with right. Paddle. I guess when I set, I should probably do this then too. And but that's not really what's affected me. So whenever I update my position, I update the bounds, position, x and y, x width, y height. So I mean, it's kind of working. Why does it do it? Is it just lag because of the no reference exception? Because bounds doesn't exist yet? Bounds? Wait, no. Because position doesn't exist yet? Texture2D doesn't exist yet. Okay. . Yeah, stop it. Sharpex2D needs to exist. Okay, I'm just curious. Seems to be a little bit further away. X with. Okay, so it tried to trick me. It is not actually the bottom right position that I'm looking for. It is the width and the height. So if I do this instead, it should be better. And then I should do that for the ball also, wherever I am updating the bounds, which if I were using a function would be easy. Okay. This place. Width height, width height. And then width height. Width. Height. Okay, perfect. Awesome. Now, just to do other stuff. So, we'll only do a couple more things and then we'll be done. So, also, we're going to have a sound bloop and an audio manager AM. And it doesn't know what those are, so I'll remind it. Oh, come on. Oh, it knows now. Okay. And then the load content thing, which I didn't use yet because I was loading everything in the actual classes itself because I was lazy. But basically, this content manager thing is passed into every load content function. So I can just use that to content.load sound, and then this is going to be just like before, 1, 2, 3 resources bloop.wave, and then that is going to be bloop. And then it doesn't really matter if I do it in initialize or load content, but it's going to be am equals new audio manager. Then I will use the audio manager to play bloop, but that doesn't exist yet. So I'm just going to use LMMS, which is a Linux Multimedia Studio, and I'm just going to make it exist. So if I get one of these, where is it? One of these SFX or sound effects, then I will, what will I do? Move around these dials. I'll go with that one. So export, why don't I go to place that I'm doing the resources, and then if I go to resources, cool, so it exists now, and now I should be able to, whenever I'm doing this reverse whatever, I should be able to do am.play bloop. No, I can't do that. Invalid file format. Oh yeah, okay, that's kind of ridiculous. But so I'm using the wave out initializer, and I don't really know why this isn't working. Because if it's wave out, it should obviously be able to handle wave files, but instead I'm just gonna do the CS core stuff, stop debugging, and then I'm going to go back to the stuff that I downloaded, to this external directory. There's this Sharpex2D.cs core project. I'm going to copy that into this place, so I'm going to have 3 projects all together in this solution. I'm going to do what I did before in the beginning, and I'm going to add existing project, go to CS core, add that, then go to Pong, the game project, add reference to solution, my other project. Okay. So now that I have that, I should actually be able to do what I wanted to do before, direct sound initializer. And now I can actually resolve it, and it'll know what I'm talking about. So now, hopefully, if I do my wave file, it will actually know how to do stuff. Yeah. So it kind of lagged there a little bit when I played the sound. So what I'm going to do is kind of copy what he did in X-Plane. In Entity Composer. So if you do this as a task, it'll be its own thread, kind of separately. Oh, come on. Oh, yeah. And play blue. And then I don't need this anymore. Now it should not lag me anymore. Because it's happening in its own thread now. Okay, so when it hits the side, it basically vanishes into nowhere. So if I look in the look in the ball class, I can see the position. I'm not setting it to public or private. I forget which one it is by default, but I'm just going to make it public. And then in the Pong scene on update, I'm checking for intersection, and also I want to check is less than 0. How about I keep these separate? Position x is greater than 800. I guess here is where I could do some points and stuff like that. But right now what I'm going to do is just ball.reset. And that doesn't exist, so public void reset. Position equals where it started. Yep, 400, 300. So, let's see if that works. Cool. Actually, with this color scheme, it is a lot better. Cool. So, alright, so that's good enough for now. You can probably do a few more things. Yeah, I think I can scroll to infinity with this. Need to add AI to the other one, add player 2 controls, things like that. But yeah, that's good enough for now. Enjoy.
Parents are always on my case. You always play games all the time, so why can't you make them? I programmed this Pong game with the paddle that was supposed to bleed. But blooped.